Hi, I'm Minette Rushing, and I am coming to you from the Custom Cake Studio. And today I'm going to share with you the gum paste or sugar paste recipe that I use to make our flowers. There's a Q&A app on there. I want to welcome everybody. And there's a Q&A app, so if you have questions, please feel free to use it. And we'll go ahead and get started. The recipe that I'm using is actually a variation of a recipe that a lady named Rosemary Watson gave me years ago. And I prefer to make my own sugar paste because I know it's going to dry hard and I can control the strength of it, which is what I really like. It dries fast, it dries hard. I can add color to it without messing up the recipe. And I'm going to share all this with you too as we go along. So let's go over the recipe. I use 1 pound of 10x sugar, and we're going to post the recipe too later on. 2 tablespoons of gum tragacanth, 1/4 cup of cold water, 1½ teaspoons of gelatin, 2 tablespoons of corn syrup. And I prefer the Karo corn syrup. I've tried it with store brands, and I don't know if it's because there's more water in the store brands, but for me, the Karo works best for me. But of course, you can use whatever works best for you. And then also too, I've got a little bit of shortening that I've set aside over here to use when I start kneading the gum paste. All right. I like to also go ahead and measure everything out before I actually get started mixing. That way I find there's less chance I'm going to forget something. So I'm going to turn my scale on, put the bowl on, and zero it out. And we're going to add 1 pound of powdered sugar. Now, if your powdered sugar is lumpy, be sure and sift it. You don't want any lumps in it. Almost there. There we go. Yikes. Okay. To this, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of gum tragacanth. Now, the nice thing about using gum tragacanth is that if you live in a climate where it's really dry, you may not have to use as much. So put 1 in, and I'm just scooping and sweeping with my finger, and 2. All right. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the bowl with some aluminum foil, and I've preheated my oven to 250, somewhere between 200 and 250, and I'm going to put this in my oven and let the powders warm up for about 15 minutes. And actually, I already have one in there, so it's cooking now. All right, next we're going to, let me move this out the way. All right, next I'm going to take my 1.5 teaspoons of gelatin and my 1/4 cup of water and just kind of sprinkle it in. And this is going to sit in here for somewhere between 5 to 15 minutes. You don't want it to go over 15 minutes. And what you're doing essentially is called blooming the gelatin, and you're softening it. So, and then we'll put this aside and let that bloom. And then the next thing we need is our corn syrup, and we'll use 2 tablespoons of corn syrup. And I've already put this in here, so we're good to go with this. So let me go ahead and take the powdered sugar and the gum trag out of the oven. I'll be right back. Okay, it's very hot, so be very careful when you cut it. And I'm going to take my paddle and just kind of stir it up a little bit. And I can feel the warmth. It's not hot, but it's definitely very warm. Now, if you don't want to use your oven, you can always warm this up on with a bain-marie, which is just a pot with some simmering water, and you can put this over it, and that works just as well too. Okay, so we've got this all nicely mixed, and while we're waiting a couple more minutes for the gelatin to bloom, let me just share with you how you can make really dark gum paste with this recipe. The water in the original recipe calls for 1/4 a cup, but let's say you wanted to make like a really dark red. So what you could do is you could substitute your red gel color, let's say a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons, and you can remove 2 teaspoons of water and put the red gel color in here. So the liquid's the same amount, so you're not destroying the integrity of the paste. All right, let's go ahead then and put this on the mixer. And like I said, be really careful with this pot. And I'm using the paddle attachment. Okay. Now I think the gelatin has bloomed. It's been probably a little over 5 minutes, so we're going to go ahead and warm this. And the way I do it is I do it in the microwave, and I've got a microwave safe cup. And just do it, I do it like maybe at 10-second intervals. And the thing is that you've really got to get the gelatin melted. If you have any particles of unmelted gelatin in your gum paste, it's going to show up as little nubs, and that's not a good thing. So let me go ahead and melt this. Can you show this to me? All right, in my microwave, it takes about 20 seconds. And one of the ways I know it's done is because there's like a little trail here. And you can see how there's some like little white tails or trails or whatever you want to call them. And that's one of the ways I know it's done. Also, too, I'm going to feel it because sometimes it can be deceptive. You can think it's all melted, but I can feel now that it is. But if you feel any sort of little gelatin granules in there, go ahead and give it another 5 seconds or so just to make sure it's completely melted, because that is really important. Okay. Put this aside here. And the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead, I want my corn syrup to be at room temperature, or actually a little bit warmer, so I'm going to put that in for about 10 seconds in the microwave. Okay, and like I said, you just want to get this kind of warm to the touch, but not really hot. All right, now I'm going to put everything in. Have a little bit of powdered sugar in that too. Salt some of the little white stuff. And then the gelatin's going to go in. And next, we're going to turn it on. And you want to turn it on low, just so it gets incorporated. And it's going to be sticky and gooey at this point. Okay, now you can feel it kind of, the sound of it. It's kind of pulling a little bit. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it on high. Let it mix until the whole feels cool. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay. You can see it starting to come together really nicely now. Don't be afraid to use the recipe and to adjust it to your climate, because everybody's climate is a little bit different, and it's going to behave differently in Savannah than, let's say, it does in Tucson. So what I'm looking for is for the bowl to feel cool and to make sure everything is well mixed and cohesive. And now I'm going to go ahead and prepare my table to knead it. Okay, I'm going to use a little bit of shortening so I can turn it out on this. And I'm going to take my bench scraper, which is what I'm going to use to get it out of the mixer with, and I'm going to put shortening on it too, so it doesn't stick. Okay, let's check the bowl. Okay, let's go ahead and take it out. Try to get it out. There we go. This is my really old mixer. And I'm going to put some shortening on my hands too, so it doesn't get all sticky. Feels really good though. And when you take it out, it's going to feel kind of soft and marshmallowy. Is that a word, marshmallowy? And I'm going to just scrape it out of the bowl. I'll try to get all of it out. And now I'm just going to knead it. And I knead it until it, so you can, I don't know if you could hear the bubbles popping or not, like chewing gum sort of. But I knead it until it's not kind of marshmallowy and foamy feeling anymore. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's almost like a stone. It's not sticky. And it's beautiful and white. It's really a nice white gum paste. Now, this particular recipe, the gum paste works best if you let it rest for about 12 hours overnight. You can use it right now, like we could go ahead and start using it, but it just wouldn't have that nice elasticity that we want from it. And that's the reason that I switched to a recipe with gum tragacanth in it, is because I liked the elastic feel in it. Another thing too that's really nice about this recipe, if you've had it for a while and or you're using it, you've got little bits left over and it's starting to get kind of dry, then all you have to do is just add a tiny bit of water to your paste and knead it in, and maybe with a little bit of shortening too, and then it will revive it. So that's a nice option too. And like I said, if you want to do make really dark colors, then the best thing to do is just take out a little bit of water and replace it with the same amount of coloring. Now, if you're just going to do a pastel, you can just work it in pretty easily. So the last thing I'm going to do is just kind of coat it with some shortening. Right. And then wrap it with some saran wrap. Push it in and make sure you've got all the air out of it. That's it. Twist it, and then I'm going to wrap it twice because the saran wrap does have some porousness to it. And then I keep mine in a heavy-duty Ziploc bag or zippy bag. And I've got the date on it. I'd like to label and date everything. And then make sure this has got all the air out of it. And now it's ready for storage. If you're going to use it right away, I go ahead and just put it in the refrigerator and let it sit overnight. And then when I bring it out to use the next morning, I'll cut off a piece, put it in the microwave for about 5 seconds, and just kind of warm it up. You don't want it hot, but just so that you can go ahead and use it a little bit more easily. And if I'm not going to be using it for a while and I want to stockpile it, then I'll just put it in the freezer. So it'll last pretty much forever in the freezer. And it'll keep for a long time in the fridge as well. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes. How do you maintain proper pliability with a wet or dry climate?
How do you, say that again, how do you
Maintain proper pliability.
proper pliability? The thing that gives it the pliability is the type of gum that you're using. So for me, I'm using gum tragacanth. There are a lot of other recipes out there that will use a Tylose or use a gum tragacanth and CMC combination. For me, I control it with the gum. So if it's a really humid day, I may need to add a little bit more to it. Or if it's a really dry day, you can kind of back it out a little bit. And that's something that you can even do after you've already made it. If you see where it's really almost too soft for you, then go ahead and just add a little bit. And it's just a little bit, don't add much to it to firm it up, and let it sit for at least an hour. Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you all so much. This concludes my presentation. I appreciate you joining me, and I hope everybody's ready to make some sugar flowers now. Thank you.